That's right. We are in Secularia this week, and that is indeed a fictional place because there is no secular area. All of our stops are fictional, if you haven't gathered yet. But Secularia, in fact, sadly, is fictional everywhere. Here in the first great secular nation, the United States of America, where we have no secular voice. There is no secular component seemingly to government. There is no secular voting demographic. There is, but it hasn't yet made the splash that it will soon. And there is no secular effort in policymaking. All we get is pandering to religious people. It is the irreverent Rob with you again, and with me again is Balloon Animal Jason. What's going on, man?
It's a hot one today.
It really is. We go from winter to summer, don't we?
Yeah, it's melting all the balloons. It's annoying.
What do you do about that?
Just stand in the shade mostly.
Do they melt together in like a big glob of color, or do they?
No, they don't usually. They just pop a lot when it's hot.
And they just lose their shape no matter what you tie it into. It melts into a blob.
Yeah, eventually it all turns into basically a worm at some point.
Take a picture, kid. And then it disappears. What do you think about that? Does it strike you with the same irony that this is the world's first great secular nation and we're just the least secular nation?
It does, especially when I think about like scientific advancement and like universities and things like that, where though you think about the politicians' advisors or all of these scientists who, for the most part, don't believe or even care about religious stuff, and they have to kind of advise these guys who are pretending to be, some of them I'm sure are religious, but at least pretending to be religious. So I kind of find that interesting, where mostly for advancement in general of technology, a lot of the people who complain about religion or even politics on social media, it's like, well, the founders of Twitter, I don't know if all of them are atheists, but I know at least a couple of them are openly atheist, and it's like, I don't know what Zuckerberg's deal is, but I don't know. He was atheist at one point. Now he's not. But I have a feeling it was more of a backlash.
Yeah, because his grandma didn't want to, accept the fact. He's like most modern Jews. I'm sure he's basically an atheist.
Yeah,
and culturally identifies Jewish still. I think that's what we find with our modern educated Jewish friends for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole God in government, is a recent addition. This is what kills me. And people have it's become increasingly obvious that there's a conspiracy on the part of the people who educate our children in this country to keep them in that cycle of ignorance and let them assume that this is a Christian nation, which of course it never was, and I was never taught that myself. I don't know about you. You're a little younger than me, but the tacit approval of "In God We Trust" is kind of something that everybody sort of takes as a lost fight, and I think we just kind of accept it as, even as atheists, we kind of fight the other things that, but we sort of put up with the "In God We Trust," and one of our guests today, Sally Hunt, is not putting up with that. She's attempting to change the law, and in fact drag this back to secularity as a country. Did it ever dawn on you that that might happen, and why does it take a half a century to wake up and realize that was added by the anti-communists basically in the 50s?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I'm trying to think of it. As a kid, we weren't really taught that it was based off of that I remember. But we didn't really think about it a lot. And so I think even like the "In God We Trust" on the dollar bill, it's like, I think for 90%, this is a number I'm making up, let's say 90% of America, they're just like, we don't really care. But I do think those fights are important because here, actually, let me just do that.
Yeah, that's all right. I'll edit it out.
Yeah, I think those fights are important because, if you go to Europe, they're like, you guys fight over this? This doesn't make any sense. And I think those are the things that are really holding us back, is that we have so many issues that going on, but those are ones that are interface every day, that if we can get those gone, I think a lot of other stuff will clear up, like people saying, we should have the 10 Commandments in the courtroom or in the schools or wherever they want to throw that. I think those types of things, pulling those down, will help. So it feels like a small victory, but I think those are actually the ones that, because they're in our face every day, we sort of get used to them, but those are really the ones that are going to make a huge difference if we can pull it off.
I think you're right, and what she's doing is so important because of that I was stunned to realize that I hadn't put my finger on it before. I mean, that's where we need to start. We need to go back to e pluribus unum. We need to go back to a secular government. We need to forget about divisive language like "in God we trust," when all of us don't trust in God. But
is that the original motto? What is
yeah, sure, e pluribus unum, out of many one.
So I think
it really, and it sums it up like a lot of things. Yeah. The founders were pretty freaking smart when it comes right down to it. They, that motto is
totally fits.
It totally fits the melting pot that America is and even was then. And it's inclusive. It can be seen to include folks who were excluded previously, if we let that be our motto. And speaking of slaves and Native Americans.
Yeah, and I think the irony being, a lot of the people who would say "in God we trust," I'm generalizing here, but like they'd be the same ones who hang onto the Confederate flag as like it's historical, so that we can almost use that same argument of like, let's go back to the original because it's historically what was, like if you want to hang on to history, let's do it everywhere instead of just where you find it, to fit what you want to do.
Exactly, and it goes back to my original point. Let's teach the kids what I learned about the deism of the founders, about their philosophy, about how they based, the Constitution on the teachings of Cicero, and obscure political strategies that hadn't been tried, that were, basically theories of ancient writings that they were privy to because of their education. And it happened to be that, the few of them that worked on it together had that in common, and so they could form a theoretic government based on what they'd learned in college. They were the educated elite, as I've said many times. They weren't just followers of Jesus trying to carve a land out of the wilderness. And so we need to get back to, the actual facts of what they were about. And what they were about was building a country out of many colonists, some of whom were religious and some of whom were quite capitalist in nature, but creating a country where all those people could feel free to worship and live their lives the way they wanted without feeling like the new government was built around one or the other of them, giving that faction the ability to dominate the others. That's really what the founders had to do with making America. So I wanted to ask you, of course, we do trust in God. I trust in God to do several things. Just none of them have anything to do with running the government. But I do trust in God for several things. So I want to, ask you. I'll start, give you an example of what I mean. I trust in God to remain fictional. There you go. What do you trust in God to do or be?
That's an interesting question. I think going more agnostic, I expect him. I trust in God to do exactly the same thing he does every day, in the sense of, I don't need to, praying, whatever. Like, even if there was a God, none of that obviously works, so it doesn't make any sense. So it's almost where he's, to stay irrelevant, I guess would be a better way.
So consistency. You trust in God to be consistent.
Yeah, so consistently either non-existing or consistent. Like, it's not, me praying to him isn't going to change if he had a plan, what it would be. So consistency, I guess, is a good way to put it.
I trust in God to not interfere with a school shooting.
Yeah, I agree with that one. I trust in God to stay. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I trust in God to be people to be many gods that people make up. There'll be more gods. This isn't the Christian God. I don't think is the last God. Do you think they'll ever make up? I mean, is Scientology the same God?
Yeah, you trust in God to have many personifications.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
I trust in God. I have one. I don't know. I lost it. What else we got? Weather Jesus from Stonehenge. Are you a big pagan guy? Big druid follower? You like Stonehenge?
I was,
that
yeah.
kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think that's all cool. I think it's more fascinating as historical. It's just interesting historically. So I mean, and I think metaphorically, you have all these, like celebrating the solstice and things like that. Like, it's like that you're celebrating, the seasons, things like that. Like, that's all beautiful poetry. Yeah, I think way more than hanging a dude on a cross and saying it's a miracle kind of thing.
Well, now, do you think there was a possibility? So people have forwarded the theory that Jesus visited Europe, so we can tie it all together. I think that's the point. We send somebody to Stonehenge because maybe, being some sort of religious site, maybe Jesus will pick it. The weather's nice there. I don't know. So
I feel like if he was the son of God, he would have probably visited several.
Everywhere, right?
Yeah, I would think he'd at least leave the Middle East.
Travel the world once.
Actually, yeah. Did he even leave? I mean, did he even leave Jerusalem? I don't know.
They don't know what he did. This is the thing, between ages of 12 and 30, or 8 and 30, whatever it is. He could have been doing anything. I'm thinking, if you could, why not see the world? If you know you're going to die when you're 33.
I'm not sure what a 12-year-old does.
You're going to die ugly. He knows he's going to die ugly because he's God.
Mm-hmm.
And he has to submit because that's the whole bit. You may as well see the world, and why not? I don't know. Follow the Roman armies around. Maybe he was a like
squire.
Squire, yeah. Thank you. Like a centurion's aide, or I don't know what they had in Rome, in the Roman.
Yeah.
But he could have carried ammunition, or something.
The Romans are going hungry. He's like, I got this.
He's a carpenter, for the
yeah.
That's how he's a carpenter. So maybe he made arrow shafts.
Do you think he ever built a cross?
I think probably we know he had to carry his own cross,
yeah.
So they probably had to build it too. I mean, why not?
He's a carpenter why not?
Add insult to injury. The Romans were good at that.
Yeah.
Here, build your own cross. Wait, chop your own trees down. Build your own cross. Carry the fucker. Dig the hole. Set it up.
Yeah.
Pour the cement. Wait for the cement to dry in the post hole because you don't want it tipping over.
Yeah, he's God's a handy guy, I guess.
Well, you got to be handy when you're a carpenter in an area of the world that has no trees, desert. You have to be handy. So we know that. We know Jesus. If old Jesus was a carpenter, he was mighty handy. So, and what else we got then? I think that's about it. The news, weather Jesus, Sally Hunt.
Yeah, everyone should check out the YouTube channel and the Patreon page. Maybe hit us up on Twitter.
And follow. Look for Sally Hunt's work. It's important. So we're gonna let you listen to what she has to say here in a moment, and enjoy your moments in Secularia, because after this, it's back to the theocracy that is your sad, sad life in America. Later.
Sounds good, man.